A reading from Luke chapter 13, verses 6 to 9. Jesus told this parable. A man owned a fig tree planted in his vineyard. He came looking for fruit on it and found none. He said to his gardener, "Look, I've come looking for fruit on this fig tree for the past 3 years, and I've never found any. Cut it down. Why should it continue depleting the soil's nutrients?" The gardener responded, "Lord, give it one more year, and I will dig around it and give it fertilizer. Maybe it will produce fruit next year. If not, then you can cut it down." May God help us to apply these words to our lives. Let it be so. I invite you to take a deep breath with me. Let us breathe in and out. Many of us heard as a child Aesop's fable about the tortoise and the hare. The story begins with the hare when the hare was making fun of the tortoise for being so slow. The hare laughed and mocked the tortoise, saying, "Do you ever get where you're going?" And the tortoise replies, "Absolutely. I will get there sooner than you think. I'll race you, and then we'll see." The hare thought this was a ridiculous idea, but it could be fun. So the tortoise and the hare decided to race. The fox agreed to be the judge and marked off the distance from start to finish. And once the race began, it wasn't long before the hare was long out of sight. In the hopes of making the tortoise feel silly, the hare lay down and took a nap, with the idea that he would wait until the tortoise caught up and then finish the race well ahead of the tortoise. Meanwhile, the tortoise continued at his steady pace, and eventually passed the hare where he was sleeping. But the hare didn't wake up when he intended to. Instead, he rose from his nap when the tortoise was near the finish line. The hare ran as fast as he could, but he could not beat the tortoise. And so the tortoise won the race. We often talk about the moral of this story as being the fastest person is not always the winner. Sometimes slow and steady wins the race. That's what I tell my children. It also, though, supports the idea that is prevalent in our culture, that if you stop and rest, you will not win. You will not be at the top of whatever mountain you're trying to climb, because someone who did not stop will always pass you up. As I was reflecting and writing this sermon this week, I came across an article that was discussing who was the greatest of all time, or the GOAT of NBA basketball. Apparently, there is great debate among fans, analysts, and players about who deserves this title. For some, the title belongs to Michael Jordan. For others, it's LeBron James. In the NBA, like in many sports, competition is strong, and there's always a concern that if you are sleeping, resting, or recovering from an injury, someone else is working out, shooting hoops, hitting the gym, and they will, like the tortoise, pass you up. This is also true in our own lives. We are constantly on the move, constantly trying to be more successful, achieve more, and come out on the top of everything. To do that, we cannot stop. We cannot be the hare. So we have our jobs and our side hustles. We're constantly tracked by apps that track our sleep, the amount of times we stand, and the workouts we do. And when we hit it all, it pushes us to do even more. Squeeze in another workout or stand an extra hour. And we bring this constant striving into our family lives. We can't sit still, so neither can our children. We enroll them in soccer and basketball and swimming and gymnastics and theater and so much more. And we struggle to manage keeping up with the carpool, snack supplying, and the never-ending schedule. And if you are retired, you're not immune either. You have doctor's appointments and volunteer jobs and kids to babysit and trips to go on and so on. We even make spiritual disciplines into something that keeps us busy. Whether we're reading the Bible or attending multiple worship services or meditating for 20 minutes or praying or doing all of these things. We believe and we teach our children that you are only as holy as the number of spiritual things you do. So whenever anyone asks you, how are you? We naturally and without a second thought say, busy. We are busy all the time. So we understand there is no time to waste, no time to wait around. So when we read this parable about the fig tree, we can easily identify with the owner of the vineyard. The owner has waited 3 years, 3 years, and this fig tree has produced absolutely nothing. The owner cannot wait another minute, another moment if that tree is not going to do anything. It is just wasting time and ruining the soil while it just sits there. The assumption we make, and the one the owner makes, is that the fig tree is doing nothing if it's not producing, and doing nothing is not okay. But science tells us that while this fig tree looks like it's doing nothing, there is a lot going on underground. The roots of the tree are growing deeper. They're making connections and creating a networking system with the fungi in the soil. And once the tree establishes good roots and ample water and a network, it can turn its attention to producing. Science also tells us that the average fig tree produces its first fruit somewhere between 3 and 5 years. So the owner is barely giving time for this tree to become ready to produce healthy and ripe fruit. While the owner wants to cut the tree down, the gardener suggests that the owner give the fig tree 1 more year. The gardener says he will dig around it, freeing up the soil, and apply fertilizer to help it grow. The gardener wants to give the fig tree a bit more time to create what it needs in order to produce. The fig tree needs time to rest from producing, and so do we. One of the many factors that people have been taking into account when considering who is the greatest of all time basketball player is the amount of sleep and recovery time they have. According to several reports, whether they are true or not, Michael Jordan slept only a few hours a night for most of his career, while LeBron James sleeps 10 to 11 hours a night with additional few hours during the day. All that rest for some suggests that LeBron James is able to physically and emotionally recover much more quickly, and thus is the GOAT of basketball. Science has often told us how the lack of sleep affects us, but recent scientific research is showing us the effects of getting enough rest. For example, many elite athletes like LeBron James work sleep right into their schedules. Gabby Thomas, an Olympic gold medalist, says that prioritizing sleep has helped her become one of the best runners in the world. The British cycling team in 2008 brought their own pillows and mattresses to the Olympic Games in Beijing so they could reap the benefits of better sleep. And according to a Stanford University study, extending sleep to 10 hours improves sprint times, shooting accuracy, and decreased fatigue among college basketball players. Rest helps the best athletes in the world, and it can help us too. Science has shown that breaks from work can boost creativity, increase productivity, promote well-being and mental health, improve moods and decision making, and strengthen relationships. In our lives of faith, we know that rest is important. In Genesis, we are told that God created the world, and then on the seventh day, God rested. God stopped. Maybe God even took a nap. When the Hebrews had been worked to the bone and God freed them from slavery in Egypt, God gave them the 10 commandments to teach them how to live as God's people. The third commandment God gave to the Hebrews was to observe the Sabbath, to rest. Jesus tells us that humanity wasn't made to observe the Sabbath. The Sabbath was created for humanity, to remind us to stop, to rest. In my experience, spiritual growth does not come simply from reading devotionals, attending worship, practicing a spiritual discipline, doing ministry, and participating in formation classes. We also need rest. We need to observe the Sabbath. We need to make time to stop and watch the sunrise, to read our favorite books, to watch the deer, the bunnies, and the birds in our yards, to stop and literally smell the roses. We need time to do the things that bring us joy, whether that is gardening or building puzzles or walking in the park or sleeping in. We need time to slow down, to allow our brains to create pathways between all that we are experiencing, all that we are sensing, and all that we know. Rest fosters growth. The fig tree needs those few years of rest, of grounding, and root building in order to produce high quality fruit. And we need rest and slowing down in order to become mature children of God. People who take a breath and slow down before we yell and scream and harm other people. People who pause and consider why they are even angry before they act on their anger. People who slow down and wonder about their assumptions before they jump to conclusions, believing they have all the facts when they don't. Rest fosters growth and spiritual maturity. We live in a world that believes that rest and growth are extremes on the same line. But the truth is, rest and growth go in together. They go hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other. God knows this, Jesus knows this, and so do we. So may we take the radical step of slowing down in a busy world, of resting our bodies and our souls, so the fruit we do produce will be mature and ripe, and will be exactly what our faith expects of us. Amen.